Without much ado, we now begin with panel discussion 1. I invite on stage the moderator for our panel discussion 1, Captain Pankaj Kapoor. Captain Pankaj Kapoor is a ship captain turned maritime lawyer. He has been part of Niti Aayog Planning Commission of India for drafting National Maritime Policy. He has also been a member of various government committees, including one constituted by the Prime Minister's office. Presently, besides being a legal advisor of various PSUs, he is an adjunct professor at multiple universities across India. He is a senior partner in law firm India Law Offices and managing partner with law firm Quadrant Legal. So I ask other panelists as well to join us on stage. Mr. Puneet Oza, Chief Executive Officer, Wizbulk. Welcome, sir. Mr. Amit Solanki, President, Liability and Special Risk, Howden Insurance Brokers India Private Limited. Welcome, sir. Captain Gajanan Karanzikar, former President, All India Maritime Pilots Association. Welcome, sir. We have two panelists online here with us today. Mr. David Pease, Chief Executive Officer, DP88, Insurtech Consultancy, Hong Kong, and Commodore Sujit Samadar, Founder and Secretary, Society for Aerospace, Maritime and Defense Studies. They would be joining us online. So give me a moment to connect to them on Zoom. May I ask the technical team to connect to Zoom? It's already connected, should be reflected on the main screen.
Hello.
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Okay, good.
So we have here with us Mr. David Pease online and Commodore Sujit Samadar as well. Thank you for joining us, sir. And we will be starting with the panel discussion. Over to Captain Pankaj Kapoor.
Thank you. I hope the organizers have advanced their clocks. We were to start at 15:45. It's now 16:45. And thank you everyone for your patience. We'll straight away dive into our panel discussions with a little bit of introduction because Commodore Sujit has to go for another appointment at 16:45. He's attending from New Delhi. 2016, let me take you back to an incident in 2016 where where in fact a global shipping company experienced a couple of hit and run cases. What I mean by hit and run cases is that they were a number of ships of that company were attacked by pirates, and those pirates incidentally had the exact location of the containers. So they didn't ask for any ransom or they didn't hijack the ship. They just headed straight for that container, stole the cargo and disappeared. What really amazed everybody was how come these people knew exact location of those containers on the ship. On later investigations, it was found that the container management system of the company had been hacked. And hence, those hackers knew exactly where those containers were. And the cargo inside those containers were precious jewels and jewelry. So they were aware of exactly where those containers were. In another incident in 2020, as recent as September 2020, a ship, an oil tanker, approached Singapore. They did report their position. But the Singapore authorities said that we can't locate you on our AIS, that is Automatic Identification System. The owners made a couple of arrangements, sent shore technicians to inspect it. Even then, that ship was not showing on the AIS display of the Singapore authorities. Finally, they did replace the equipment. Even then, the ship was not showing. And on investigation by the Singapore police, it was found that the AIS system of that ship was hacked, and 2 other ships who were in the drug smuggling trade were using the MMSI number of this ship. While technology has made life easier, it has also brought in a lot of hazards along with it. In technological circles, it is believed that there are 3 levels of technology. Level 1, where we know the technology and we are using it. The level 2 is using it like AIS, GPS and ECDIS on the ship. Level 2 is where we know the technology, but we are not yet using it. For example, technologies like digitalization, for which we have, or cyber security, for which we have the discussion today. And finally, there are emerging, level 3 is emerging technologies of which we are still exploring, and that's blue economy. Today's discussion, we are going to delve into all of these and how these technologies are in fact changing not only the international but also the shipping scenario or extending the shipping horizons. And I'm very pleased to invite our eminent panelists today. We have for cyber security, we have Mr. David, who is joining from Hong Kong. We have Mr. Raman Solanki here, present. For blue economy, we have Commodore Sujit. A person like him needs no introduction. And we have Captain Karanjikar. And for digitalization, which is now gradually seeping into shipping, we have Mr. Puneet Oza. So something which is still developing or emerging, and also a buzzword now, not only in the shipping but also the international circles, is blue economy. So we'll straight away dive into that and have a very brief panel discussions. Of course, as Captain Kamal has said, that the question answers would be done later. So, Commodore Sujit, I hope you're around, sir. If you could just say yes. Commodore Sujit, can you hear us, sir, from Delhi? Madam, can you check, please, if he's able to hear us? Yeah, he's here, but we can't hear him. Sir, I believe you need to unmute yourself, please.
I can hear everybody.
Right, sir. Thank you very much. So now we are very anxious to hear your views on what exactly is blue economy. You've heard so much about it. Could you please highlight exactly what exactly does this word term blue economy means?
Thank you very much for the opportunity of being there today with you, and I am really very interested to listen to this conversation that's ongoing since the afternoon when we heard the Honourable Minister speak, and then we had some very nice ideas which came up on seafarers. All of this is actually interlinked to the blue economy. Now, it was Gunther Pauly in 1990s or so who coined the term blue economy, which is basically to look at all the sustainable utilization of ocean resources. Since then, the discussion has veered around to different sorts of understanding of the blue economy, but I think the world's best, in my view, definition is from the World Bank. And I just want to read this out so that we can all understand it very easily. It says, blue economy is the sustainable use of ocean resources for economic growth, improved livelihoods and jobs, while preserving the health of ocean ecosystems. So there's a lot of language here: economic growth, livelihoods, jobs, and preserving the health of ocean ecosystem. So in this whole milieu, we can just put these into 2 or 3 baskets. Let's put it in 2 baskets for simplicity's sake. One are all those activities that are conducted on the oceans. So that is the sort of ocean economy, which means, extraction of hydrocarbons from seabed, or shipping, of course, a whole lot of deep sea fishing that we do, and a variety of other activities that happen on the oceans. There's also a lot of activities that happen between the interface between the ocean and the land, which can be ports, which can be desalination plants, it can be a variety of these sort of activities which work on the interface. Both of them have an impact on the overall ocean's ecosystem. Now, why is it important for us to worry about it? The fact of the matter is that the UNCLOS in various sections of it, which we can dwell into a little later, delineates the ocean spaces into basically two categories. You know, those areas which are under national jurisdiction and those areas which are not under national jurisdiction. And surprisingly, or as most of us in seafarer world would know, 67% of the ocean areas of this world are areas beyond national jurisdiction by area, and 95% by volume are areas beyond national jurisdiction. So, you know, a large amount of ocean spaces, and as was brought out by the previous presenter, Mr. Bhavnani in his presentation, that this is the challenge that seafarers have. But for environment and for sustainability, for climate change and everything else, we need to recall a few points which actually push into the blue economy. Number one, all of us can take 2 breaths. Please take it 2 breaths. The second breath that you have done has come from the oceans. And at least 50% of the oxygen that is generated in this world comes from the oceans. And unless we have some sustainable means for ensuring that oxygen supply continues to serve us, mankind's future is sort of grim. The second part of it is that whilst we understand that Amazon forests and all these other forests here and there consume oxygen, generate oxygen and do some carbon sequestration, but the oceans themselves take in about 30 to 40% of the carbon dioxide that is taken up. So the oceans are very, very fragile, and interestingly, we are now seeing a conflict, and this is where I want to come in very quickly to cover this, and then we can discuss it at length. The core of the core issue is what is meant by the freedom of the seas. UNCLOS defines the freedom of the seas to engage in fishing. You know, that is one of the freedom of the seas. And the second part of the UNCLOS also addresses the area. Now, these two areas, these two definitions have a very interesting impact on mankind. So, whilst you have the freedom of, under the provisions of the UNCLOS to do, engage in fishing in the high seas, you also have certain rights and duties that you perform, but those are on the sovereign, but not on the companies which engage into fishing. On the other hand, the seabed is the common heritage of mankind. So for which there is a very structured organization, as most of us know, the International Seabed Authority and what have you, where it is the common heritage of mankind. The key problem today that we are seeing in the blue economy issue is how much of this freedom of the seas can be actually delegated to companies to operate at the risk of mankind. This is the core of the core debate on the blue economy and finding out how the sustainability game can be done. These are my initial comments. I'll be happy to come back when there are more questions. Thank you very much once again for this hearing.
Right, sir. Thank you so much. Now, you did mention about CO2. Well, just a thought which comes to my mind. Could you please tell us something which is very exciting for all of us about what is this CO2 capture, which we hear a lot nowadays? What is this CO2 capture?
See, of course, we don't want to criticize the shipping community, but we are also a fair amount of emitters of the greenhouse gases. But as has been brought out, we produce these greenhouse gases for a cause. And of course, the International Maritime Organization, the MARPOL, and all of us have got together to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from ships. But carbon capture and sequestration are technologies, as you mentioned, are at TRL level 7 or so, where we still have it at the lab level, but we have not been able to convert carbon sequestration and carbon capture, which comes from emissions, into let us say, into ocean areas, deep sea wells, deep sea oil wells. So you can pump back carbon dioxide back into the areas which have been vacated by crude or gases, and that's what is being planned for the future. But those emissions have to be controlled in that way. This can also be done on land, incidentally. So that's basically what we are trying to do for carbon capture and carbon sequestration.
All right, so thank you so much for that. Just a follow-up question. What exactly is the international community's position on blue economy? How are they progressing as compared to India?
Let's look at the region first. The Indian Ocean region has got the IORA, which is a forum where all the Indian Ocean region countries interact, and we also have guest countries. So the blue economy has featured on various declarations of the IORA as a key area of work. The Jakarta Declaration is particularly famous, the Mauritius Declaration is particularly famous, where the grouping of these countries have come to the conclusion that the blue economy may not be a purely sustainable initiative by any one country. Because as we know, what happens in one part of the ocean actually moves on to many other parts of the ocean. The second line of thought that the world is now coming to is about oceans and climate. Climates impact the whole world. You need not be a coastal country to be impacted by climate. Today, Germany, France are down with drought, and there are places in Spain which are flooded, and there are places in China which are flooded, which are very far away from shore. But the climate and oceans are very intrinsically linked. So therefore, the international community is well aware of it. The G20 is spoken about the blue economy, and I understand under India's stewardship of the G20, of the SCO, and of the UN Security Council, these are three hats that India is going to wear at one time. The issue of blue economy is going to come up as a discussion point, not only from the view of sustainability, but for this community of people that we are talking to, of creating new sets of entrepreneurs, startups, and businesses which create a sustainable system of livelihoods and jobs which do not harm the oceanic ecosystem.
Right.
So, there are potentials of doing many interesting work out there.
Right. Understand that. So, what you're basically saying is that the international community has to join together towards blue economy. Now, that poses a question to Captain Gajanan here. So, you have been a part of giving suggestions to the government. Could you give us some idea on what were your suggestions and how is the government accepting it?
Hi, good evening everyone. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak. Suggestions were pertaining to blue economy draft policy. Now, blue economy draft policy, we are too late actually. Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke about it in 2015, and the Economic Advisory Council has come out with the draft policy in 2020, September. It's been last 2 years, and I am very disheartened to say, as a student of blue economy, that nothing has happened on the area in India so far. I'm sorry for being critical, but this is what the fact is. The policy covers a lot of areas of emerging, non-emerging sectors, especially emerging sectors where the assessment needs to be done in India at least. When I say assessment of potential, we all talk about, blue economy of India being $2.8 trillion, of the world being $48 trillion. If blue economy was a country, it would have been the first on the scale of the country's GDP. So, given this kind of scale, our efforts are not there. What we need to do exactly is be a part of the assessment process, and we have to speed up the assessment to draw out of some benefits to the national economy. Prime Minister's aim of making 5 trillion economy is very well noted, but whereas the maritime is concerned, or where the blue economy is concerned, where the ocean economy lies there untouched. I always say in most of the forums that, the Indian Ocean is the only ocean where the fishes die of age.
Right.
That's not a very heartening comment, but our fishing sectors, and this is about the sectors which are working on, surface transportation and fishing, mainly too.
So
but there are non-emerging sectors which are always there.
That was going to be my next question. So where do you see the policy getting ahead in the non-emerging sectors?
The fishing is one of the non-emerging sectors that we are looking at. We've been fishing for last 40,000 years. So given the fact that, we should have been there where we should have been, we are not there. It's due to the lack of policy from government, lack of infrastructure. I recently attended a last month meeting of National Fishing Federation, where everybody, 90% people present there, complained that there is no fish catch in the areas they are provided with. The breeding periods have lost. We have reduced them to 2 months now and things like that. There are numerous issues with infrastructure and fishing as well. So government has done a bit. They have issued the Kisan cards to all fishermen, but nothing forward than that. I mean, we need to strengthen that complete backbone of 60% of protein supplement to the nation. I'm talking about food here, talking about food security here. So this is something where the government has to really get an act together on the non-oil sector.
I wish the Honorable Minister was here.
I wish so much.
All right. Sir, Comrade Sujit, sir, the final question to you, sir. What are the legal challenges in implementing various aspects of blue economy, especially keeping in mind the Agenda 2030? Sir? Comrade Sujit, are you there, sir?
Yeah, actually, that's not a very simple question to answer because the Agenda 2030 itself, the MIV released in 2020, have already has already given a we are already behind time. Of course, we can blame it on lots of nautical miles to cover before any of this can actually be done. From a legal perspective, as I mentioned to you earlier, is the world community is in the process of coming to an agreement, and they almost did at the 4th summit meeting on areas beyond national jurisdiction. That is one part of it, but unfortunately the agreement could not be concluded. The next item here is, of course, of being able to have a legal jurisdiction on the catch, on the fishing catch in the areas beyond national jurisdiction. How is that to be treated? So up till now, it used to be a sovereign responsibility. But the point is that the sovereigns were not conducting businesses there. And I have said this on different forums, that whilst the UN and all these other places are very good places for sovereigns to interact itself, but the criminalization of activities and the excessive fishing and overfishing that is happening in the high seas is actually being done by companies. So therefore, the departure that we need to make is to find ways and means by criminalizing these companies who are engaging in profit for themselves, using a public good for the larger public bad of humankind. So, this whole business of benefit sharing of let's say marine genetic resources from the sea.
I think we lost him. Are you still around, sir? We lost you, I think.
Way. At the moment, we do not have the legal structure in place to either penalize companies for it or to reward them for doing whatever. The rest of it in India, as far as areas beyond national jurisdiction are concerned, I think by and large, every country in the world has got that in place in terms of maritime zones of India Act or equivalent legislation in different countries. But can you hear me? Hear you?
Yeah, we can. So we can.
I can hear you.
Yeah,
Hello?
we can. So, but thank you very much for your views and thank you for sticking around. But but like you said, that absolutely true. So there are a couple of reports where Chinese ships, they switch off their AIS, come into our waters, do the shipping and then disappear. But thank you very much, Comrade Saab, for sticking around and sharing your views, and we wish you all the best for your next assignment.
Certainly, but now, right, thank you. But just one quick point on the Chinese shipping or Taiwanese shipping that is encroaching into Indian territories, or the South China Sea used to be full of squids at one time. Today you can't find one squid in that whole area. It's been all overfished. So these are big challenges for us, and this is a very nice forum for us to bring our heads together to find out how we can address this this really acute problem, which is not just about countries, it is about the survival of mankind itself. So, substantial technologies are available to pinpoint every defaulter at sea. Substantial technologies, and I engage in that field quite seriously. So we can have a different conversation on technologies for bringing to book various defaulters who are exploiting the seas in some wrong manner. Let me put it like that. But thank you very much. I'm available here. If there are any further questions, kindly let me know. I'll join in again.
Right, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. We'll now switch over to cyber security, something which we all should be well aware of, given the recent attacks, like I mentioned on that ship, oil tanker of Singapore. And that's not the only one. Our very own IMO website was hacked. Maersk Line head office was hacked. So we are aware of the hazards which are involved with the incoming of the technology. And to highlight and enlighten us on all these, we have Mr. David joining from Hong Kong and Mr. Amit Solanki here from Howden. Howden is probably the second or the third largest insurance brokers in the world. And we are fortunate to have Mr. Amit Solanki here. So David, can you hear me, please?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, please. Thank you very much for joining and waiting. All right. The first question straight away is aimed at you. What, according to you, is the possible cyber risk that a ship owner is exposed to, with not just regards to not just the office, but also on the ship? What do you feel? What do you feel is the cyber risk a ship owner is exposed to?
Right. So when it comes to cybersecurity, I think we need to go back to data, really, first of all. Without understanding data and data integrity, that is the key takeaway for this panel, in my opinion, is to understand data integrity. Because you have on board a ship, you have a lot of devices, and obviously where there's devices, there is data, but you need to know whether that data has been tampered with or not. And if you don't have a mechanism for that, you can't measure it. And if you can't measure that, you can't underwrite it in insurance, you can't do forensic evidence of what has happened to third parties, and all sorts of risks, legal, financial, even criminal, by accidentally criminal sanctions can come into play. So I think we need to envisage a ship as a triangle and map that triangle back to the cybersecurity triad, which is the basics of cybersecurity, which is protecting the perimeter of the ship, of the devices like the GPS and the AIS and other equipment, the data encryption, the confidentiality of any data, which could get you into trouble for data protection laws, and also the integrity of the data, which is overlooked by many people, especially boardroom levels. And that triangle is going to be the how we look at the protection of that ship. So of course also risk management is vital here, and I've noticed that the statistics say that ship owners have paid $3 million in ransom, but 50% of ship owners only spend 50%, less than 100,000 on risk management. So there has to be some, which I can cover a bit more later, has to be some investment into data integrity in order to make sure that ship, which is now gone in the last 4 years from being an idiosyncratic risk on its own to being a systemic risk because of digitization, where it's all now connected together, connected to ports. And when you have systemic risk, you have serious issues. Yep. And that data integrity and systemic risk are joined at the hip. All right. And also the basis of better insurance, which Amit will discuss. But that's my opening. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, you're right. Ship owners need to invest a little more. And to convince them to invest, we have Mr. Amit, who's an insurance broker himself representing Howden. Amit, given the fast changing technologies in shipping and the incoming of automated ships, yes, how do you propose that ship owners should cover themselves from possible cyber attacks?
So, thank you so much for this invitation. It's a privilege to be, present here and addressing this audience. It's a very valid question. we all know actually at the end of the day that the pace at which digitization is really happening in this maritime industry is significant. And with this, it really leads to enhanced amount of new risks and changing the current set of scheme of things, including technology, process, people on board and everything. Our advice to everyone is that one needs to first assess that how are they really functioning, in the sense that what are the key parameters that they, from their functioning part. We would suggest that it is three things: people, process, and the entire technology in which they are really using. The technology is becoming so fast-paced that hackers are finding it extremely easy to up the curve pretty soon. And one such way, we've seen malware attacks on companies. We've seen NotPetya incident happening on Maersk, which cost them upwards of $300 million of damages, which was unprecedented in the maritime industry. That really, I think, opened the eyes, right? And it's not only with regards to cyber attack, but also malware situation, ransomware situations, and everything. Important aspect here is one needs to start investing into good cyber security and having a good, robust cyber risk posture. An insurance policy is a risk transfer mechanism that helps you to basically transfer the risk from the ship owner to the insurer's balance sheet. Today, the policies are available which are extremely broad, which not only covers you from a third-party liability suits, but also first-party costs as well, which helps you not only in terms of recovering your loss, but also liability that may actually come onto you as well. So it's a fast-pacing thing. One really needs to start investing into understanding this digital space much more, and a robust risk management plan needs to be in place.
Well, thank you, Amit. You mentioned about non-Petya. That was the thing which struck the Maersk, I think, yeah?
That's right.
And I believe David was a part of the investigation of that cyber attack on Maersk offices. That's a follow-up question. Yeah, David, as a follow-up question, what are the legal implications of a maritime cyber attack, not only on ships, but even on ports? So I believe you have been part of a couple of investigations on cyber attacks in ports. So could you please enlighten us on that?
Yes. Just to finish that last piece, I did work on the first state-sponsored cyber attack in history, which was on Estonia in the Baltics in 2007, which shut down the country. And the same thing that attacked Maersk was a state-sponsored attack. So obviously state-sponsored attacks are something we have to be very, very wary of. The legal implications of a hack really are going to be the data protection laws of the different countries, because right now data protection laws are evolving. We all know about GDPR, and the basis of these data protection laws is the ability to track the provenance of data, and that data is not necessarily, always tracked. And therefore we need to know the crown jewel data that can give us a legal implication in a data protection law across various jurisdictions. And that is the data integrity I was talking about, because if you encrypt data, you have confidentiality of that data. But if somebody decrypts that data, then you don't have any integrity on it, you do not know what data was stolen, and therefore you're in a very dangerous area of data leaks for data protection. So we need to add this data integrity, which is essentially a little piece of cryptography that tells you whether that data has been hacked, where it came from, who did it, and then put it into a repository, a database, if you like, that can be looked at by third parties in the event of a hack, and prove that the evidence stands up in court what happened. If you're liable, you can own up, but if you're getting false, false action against you, you can prove it wasn't you, and you can also prove what happened in a snapshot across the thing. So that's one very important thing. The other thing, of course, is that some jurisdictions, the data protection laws become criminal laws. They become, if you pay a ransomware in America, you're liable to be in trouble, because I don't think the American government want people paying ransoms anymore. So I think there again, and I think in Asia, where I think cyber attacks are increasing by 150% a year right now, and the time to infection or compromise to discovery can be up to 300 days. So we do need to have this data integrity now to catch up. And then the sanctions come in as well, right? And so we have a lot of legal implications here that can cause a lot of trouble, and especially as we're going across border.
Yep.
So there might, but it's all based on being able to prove what has happened, and not just allow data to be used as an IT function, if you like. It needs to be a boardroom function where this data is treated as an asset. Otherwise, there will be legal trouble.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. Well, that reminds me of an incident where two youngsters, they wanted to go out in Florida for a trip with their girlfriends, and the Coast Guards refused them permission. So what they did was, within a few hours, they hacked the Coast Guard's system. So yes, data protection is very important.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And the Coast Guard for a couple of days didn't know what really happened to them, what hit them. So that brings us to the question, Amit, what extent of cyber cover should a ship owner take?
Good question. So actually, I would say that, today in this era that we are really living in, whether it is all industries, and I think maritime industries is not spared. There are only two types of companies that really exist. One who knows that their systems have been attacked. The second who do not know as yet that they've been attacked, or their systems are vulnerable or breached.
True.
It's a matter of time that everybody will be breached, or their systems or data is already out in the open web or dark web, and they are vulnerable. With this, we would definitely say that one of the first, I think, and plus maritime industry is not fast-paced to understand the changes in technology and the entire digitization of the entire industry that is really happening, including the most importantly the ship owners or the shipment companies. If you really look at it, they are all integrated, right? And whether it is the ship owner as one, the shipping company, the ports company, or the terminal company, at the end of the day, there is some amount of information which is getting shared between themselves. A breach or an attack at any one of them can cause severe rippling effect on the entire platform or the entire industry, right? And we've seen this time and again. In just 2021, just last year, there have been several such situations on extremely large companies who have taken a great emphasis on cybersecurity and had done tremendous amount of work. Companies like HMM, the South Korean company, the K-Line Group, which is the Japanese company, Transnet, which is the South African company, the Port of Houston, the Swine Pacific company in Singapore. Across the world, we've seen these companies, and these are all cases which they've come out and they've said that we have either been breached by a cyber attack, which has been because of, which was a ransomware situation, or which was actually through a subsidiary company and their systems were vulnerable, or through the port network as well is what we've been attacked, or it was through a vendor and vendor system who was actually vulnerable, through which the attackers basically got in. The ways and means through which cyber attackers can really get access to your system is enormous. And it's becoming extremely difficult to ring fence this, as David rightly said. One such way to really do this is to keep investing into your cybersecurity and to keep relooking at what kind of information that you're making out in the open or giving access to your vendors and other suppliers. This is preventive, right? What is the situation that really happens, which is where you really look at insurance. And the fact when, we've been to so many shipping companies and we said we would like to do your audit and we would like to help you assess what your risk exposures are. The first thing is basically to see your network, and we will be able to give you some elements where you are vulnerable through various platforms and tools that we have, and can come up with potential loss outcomes that you may have in the near future. That becomes the starting point, and trust me, the boards of the company, the ship owners, the various industry members, it's an eye-opening exercise for them. And I would really say that it's important because the kind of losses, David rightly said, the amount of losses that we've really seen in this industry has not increased by percentages. It's actually doubling and quadrupling every year. Pandemic has caused significant, post-pandemic, across industries, we've seen cyber incidences go up by over 100%, and in the maritime industries, over 150% as well. So investigation, to know your risk, transfer it through insurance, and assessment is something that we can really help you to do this.
Well, thank you very much, Amit, for that. Yes, in fact, rippling effect is really dangerous. Very true. Now that brings us to the last and the final follow-up question to David. David, what advice would you give to the ship operators besides what they're already doing, like incorporating it into their ISM manuals or appointing a cyber security officer? Would you give some advice to ship owners and ship operators to do something besides that?
Yes, so I think that things are happening in real time now, and obviously I guess a lot of the ship owners won't really be very well versed in cloud computing and all of the new technologies that are coming into the area. The biggest risk to a port and a ship is the cloud computing environment. I mean, Amit touched on vendors and things like this, but in the cloud environment, a misconfiguration can cause a cyber attack. It can cause, if somebody misconfigures a part of the cloud, then what can happen is that new security holes are opened up, and therefore standards need to be implemented. So all ship owners, like all corporations, and when I started on that cyber attack back in 2008 in Estonia, government, telecommunications, the defense industry, then the nuclear power industry, the energy industry, the water and utility, all came together to start to mitigate and put in technologies that could prevent human mistakes, first of all, which is like IT misconfiguration, and then to alert for the malicious attacks, which is the other half of the attack. So somehow, if you're a small ship owner, you won't be able to afford to build a security center. If you're a large, if you're like Maersk, you can afford to build a security center. Now, a security center is where all your data is concentrated, where your alerts are, and where your forensics are to protect you against data protection. It takes 3 years for a corporation to build such a security center for cybersecurity. So, but now we have new technologies which mean you can outsource. It's called SOC as a service, Security Center as a service. It can be manageable for small organizations. So this mitigation needs to be looked at. And I don't think the P&I clubs necessarily are going to go into this level of detail. They should, maybe they will. But everyone needs a service center where we have this data tracking coming out of it. So the ship owners need to invest in that because we're now into real time, we can't have a manual that we look through, really. Obviously, it would be a luxury if you had a chief information security officer on board, but my recent talks with ports and ship owners is they have an IT director, and quite often IT is not linked to operational technology, where we have smart equipment on board, and the combination of IT and OT together is essential. So I think, and lastly, ransomware, backup. Ransomware is caused by bad hygiene, right? It's caused by having your backups in the wrong place, or not being able to access your backups and things like this. So if you have proper hygiene, the ransomware will be mitigated. So I think the answer is mitigation, a course in mitigation for the ship owners. The ports are already starting it, I think, now. And then Amit will be very pleased if this mitigation is in place, because he'll be able to write much better policies.
Get a much more robust policy in place, yes. That's true.
Well,
Yeah,
thank you, David. You mentioned about PNI. We have a fair representation of PNI here. Yeah, that probably is going to be the next panel discussion. So thank you, David, and thank you, Amit, for that. Now we'll dive into the last discussion of this panel, and that is digitalization. And we have with us Puneet Oza, who's the CEO of Westbulk, and he's as handsome as me, as you can see. Right, so Puneet, first of all, we need to know, please explain what is the difference between digitalization and digitization.
Thank you so much, first of all, for inviting me to speak. I think it's great to be back in a physical conference, especially in India. I think I've left India many years ago, but India has never left me, so I think I'm very happy to be back here again. Just a quick context in terms of what.
That's what Julius Caesar said, you know.
True.
See, so I've left Rome, but Rome has never left me.
Exactly. I agree. So in this case, we have to get the context. Digitalization, digitization, and digital transformation. They are three different terms and have different meanings altogether. But interestingly, all the topics that we've discussed so far actually need digitalization in order to be successfully done. It's a common thread that runs through everything that we talked about till now. And digitization is nothing but just converting processes from manual processes to automated processes, analog to a digital process. It can be a simple report which can suddenly become more digital in nature. Instead of manually typing it out or sending it on a telex, writing it down, you actually have an electronic form of doing it. That's a very basic thing. I think everybody is getting into digitization already. It's been there for many years. Digitalization is then using those automated electronic data which is generated to eventually automate some of these tasks. So you use those reports and then try and see if you can actually create tasks, alerts, reports on an automated basis. That is digitalization. The last part is the most interesting, and that is digital transformation. Digital transformation is using all those automated processes, data points, to eventually take decisions. It's about changing the way you work in an organization. So a company or an organization should be looking eventually at a digital transformation rather than just digitization and digitalization. And why is this so relevant? Let me just try and bring another context to this. In the last 25 years, the industry, we all talk about the fact the industry has not kept pace with technology, but the trends have actually been emerging over a period of time. The first trend which has actually moved on is most of the companies were family-owned companies. The decision makers were family owners of the company. They used to go a lot more on gut feel. They used to go on this idea that I know what is going on in the market. They have now become more professional in their approach. They've got professionals who are running the businesses as CEOs or top management. Obviously, they are relying more on data-driven decision-making. This is why digital transformation is a big platform of what everybody is trying to achieve today. The second trend is the mentoring has gone away. The traditional mentoring has gone away. We are losing a lot of knowledge which was otherwise being passed on generation to generation. That technology and transformation is basically needed in order to capture and vault that knowledge. Also, there are multiple generations of people in an organization, and the younger generation is actually more accustomed to technology than what the previous generation was. So digital transformation is gathering pace because of that as well. Sorry, I'll just very quickly last trend effectively. Availability of data is abundance now. In fact, too much data is available now. So analytics has become more relevant than the data itself. What do you draw out of the data rather than the data itself, which was a premium at one point of time? Today, these trends are driving the change, and there is eventually a similarity you can draw from the airline industry that we are now having to become more customer-centric, service providing, and technology needs to aim at that going forward. That's where digital transformation has a huge role to play going forward, yeah?
Right, thank you for that. Puneet, a rather blunt question on behalf of all of us. Why do you think this is necessary in shipping when ships are already running?
Yeah, why fix it when it's not broken? I would say that we have to just look at other industries and see how they have used technology to try and enhance value for the customers. Because at the end of the day, we are a service provider. We may have the best ships in the world, but if they don't have a customer to take them on, they are useless. So at the end of the day, technology needs to be upgraded in order for people to get the same experience. I would give the same example of what we are doing in VisBulk is effectively trying to make things easier for our own internal users to eventually build better solutions for customers going forward. And that is something which I think is going to be a constant upgradation process. And I feel the younger generation has a huge role to play in this going forward because they are accustomed to technology from a very early age and they feel technology as a friend rather than a threat. This is a big perception change which has to come across the industry, and I think it's happening now, yeah.
Well, thanks, Salan. Thank you for that. You actually took that question very smartly. So another one I'm going to throw at you, that given your role as CEO of VisBulk, I believe you're heading a team which is bringing in digitalization. What advantages do you foresee, and what advice would you like to give others in the industry?
So I've been very fortunate. In fact, this is an amazing conference for me because I've been involved in the legal space. I've been involved in the technology space for the last few years, also in the bulk space for many years. And that has actually given me a very nice blend of understanding of these three areas. In terms of what VisBulk is trying to do is a very simple exercise of trying to simplify bulk shipping, which means internally we are trying to make sure that all the sources of data are unified and available in a fastest way for our team in order for them to spend less time searching for information, but more time using the information. So this sounds very simplistic, but it is actually possible because a lot of the information actually is available with third-party sources which can easily be blended into your own systems. And if you can build a platform overarching every of these sources, we can actually see that the value propositions become much clearer to our customers as well. So we are actually doing digital transformation with a combination of our own internal processes and technology, but also using the ecosystem. This is going to be a completely new concept going forward in shipping industry. We cannot have pure corporate leaders going forward. We need to have ecosystem leaders who can actually build collaborative networks going forward. We can't have a situation where we think we can do it all alone. Digital transformation is not going to be possible unless people come together. And the key threats like decarbonization or key challenges like decarbonization, disruptions and geopolitical challenges will have to be surmounted only with collaborative digital transformation. There is no other way of doing this. I can't do it alone, neither can anybody else. Yeah.
Thanks a lot. You have brought everyone together on the same platform. But that was exactly the aim of this panel discussion, that we cannot avoid the advancement in the technologies, so we should accept it and try to understand the hazards which come with it and take adequate measures and precautionary measures for that. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your patience and hearing us out for this panel discussion. Thank you, David. Thank you, Commander Sujit, for being with us online. And thank you, my panel members.
I request all the panelists to please stay back. And thank you for that enriching and thought-provoking session. I now request Captain Kamal Chadha to kindly come ahead and felicitate our moderators and panelists for their valuable time and effort. If there are any questions regarding this panel discussion, you can note it down and it can be emailed to us and then answered by the panelists later on. Thank you.